Here from Bryant-Denny Stadium in Tuscaloosa, Alabama, LSU falls in an emotional game to the Alabama Crimson Tide. Top 15 showdown. Bryce Koon alongside Glen West. Glen, let's just get to it right here. It was the first half that lived up to, I think, the storyline coming into this game. But in the second half, it was one of those where Alabama made the plays, specifically on third down. LSU didn't.
Yeah, it was a weird one. I mean, I think kind of coming in, a lot of us expected this to be a game where LSU would be able to hold up on the offensive side of the ball, and for 2 quarters that certainly looked to be the case. I mean, Jaden Daniels was absolutely terrific in the first half, really put the team on his back, and you knew that he was going to have to do that for them to have a chance tonight, and he looked the part for 2 quarters there, combines for nearly 300 yards of offense on his own, puts up 3 touchdowns, and you're thinking, all right, this is the start of something that could be pretty special here, and then it kind of falls apart there in the second half. There's no other way to say it. You only score 7 points in the second half. I know really after the first drive you don't score any points in the third quarter. So it was just a really tough night overall, I think, just considering what you knew you had to do as an offense, and you just weren't able to kind of sustain that. There were a couple of things that didn't go your way. Obviously the fourth quarter injury to Daniels really just kind of took the sails out of things, but you can certainly look at some of the penalties that LSU racked up across the night on offense. The interception to start the fourth quarter was obviously a devastating blow when you're only down 7 points, and you really need to get that momentum going to start the fourth quarter. Just not able to do it there with the drive that ends in a turnover. And BK said it after the game. We played good, but we needed to play pretty close to perfect to win this game, and just wasn't the case on either side of the ball. I mean, defensively was just an absolute atrocious performance again. I mean, like, there's been a number of these this year where you just kind of scratch your head and you just wonder, like, how do you win a game like this when you give up 300 yards of rushing offense to a team? Jalen Milroe just ran havoc all over this group for 4 quarters, 155 yards on the ground just by himself, 6 rushing touchdowns for the Alabama offense, which wasn't what we thought coming in. I mean, I'll be brutally honest. I don't think a lot of media, I don't think a lot of fans, I don't think LSU thought that this would be the kind of way that Alabama was going to win this game and move the ball offensively. With a depleted secondary that LSU had, that was not the issue on defense. It was the run fits, it was the front 7, linebackers, defensive line. Everyone's accountable here, and it was just a really poor effort execution-wise, especially in the second half there when you kind of knew that the offense was not quite clicking like it was in the first half. Needed to get a couple stops there, and you just were not able to really convert when you needed to.
You mentioned it right there, and folks watching and listening to this is an Alabama team that came into this game as one of the statistically worst rushing attacks that we had seen. Now, look, there's been some great ones here in Tuscaloosa, but under Nick Saban's tenure, this wasn't one of the best. That's disappointing. Glenn, I will tell you, and we've been feeling this, you and I have been talking about this kind of not on air as much, but this offense cannot blink. If this offense blinks, it's not good. It's not a good scenario. Yeah. They blinked with the Jaden Daniels interception, which I think is also a great play by Dallas Turner. You have to give credit. But this has to get fixed, because when you look at these next 3 games that LSU has coming up, Florida's not necessarily going to be a walk in the park. I know they just lost that game to Arkansas, but it's a physical team. And if you really, for this LSU team, if the offense blinks in the future health of Jaden Daniels, you really don't know what to expect over the course of the next 3 ball games.
Yeah, we'll see what happens here with Jaden. I mean, obviously he talked with Brian Kelly after the game, and sounds like he's dealing with a head injury. They've got to do some more testing before they know kind of what the deal is with him long term. Look, I mean, you're in a really tough spot here. You've got 3 losses, pretty much all of your hopes here of winning the SEC West and getting to that championship game were dashed tonight with this loss. And it's going to be a real, I think, just kind of check of just where this group is mentally to see if they can kind of finish these 3 games out strong. We've seen it with past years. It's just not always the case when you kind of have this really downfall game, and it's really hard to bounce back from something like this. So we'll see. I mean, I have some optimism here that they can do it, but like you mentioned, this 3-game stretch here is not going to be a walk in the park. I mean, A&M's still got a very good defense, and you still don't know the long-term health, obviously, of what Jaden's going to have to go through just to get cleared for next week. So I mean, it'll be very interesting to see kind of how they rebound from this. And I really don't have much else to say. I mean, it was just look, it was just not a good not a good night. After a first half that started with so much promise and really looked like we were going to be in for a great game, just weren't able to kind of match that in the second half, which was a huge storyline after the Florida State game when you went into that game with the lead. Was a big storyline, obviously, throughout the Ole Miss game when you were right there and just didn't make enough plays there at the end defensively. So it's been a kind of a common theme for this group that when when their backs are against the wall, I don't want to say they folded, but in games that are really important, they haven't gotten the job done. And, I think that's just kind of a way you can sum up this team right now. You're looking at 3 losses. You got 3 more games here to try to salvage somewhat of a decent season. I think you can still – I think if you win these final 3 games, you get to 9 wins. I think you can kind of consider it a plateau, a break even of what you saw last year. But certainly with the historic way this offense has gone for most of the year, it's disappointing. Yeah. There's an added layer of disappointment here when you had such a group that was performing at such a high level to not be able to have or put together much more of a better season than this.
Yeah, I want to add that as we close it out here from Bryant-Denny Stadium. You mentioned this season, I think, is going to be a disappointment for a lot of fans, and it should be, and for the program. Greg Penn talked about it. He goes, as a building, we have to get better in what we do. Because, like coming into the season, it was year 2 of Brian Kelly. It was, hey, let's continue to build and grow. But as you saw how explosive and that this offense, which ranks number 1 in the nation in a lot of statistical categories, it becomes even more disappointing that they just couldn't field an average defense. Defense lets them down, but do want to give credit to Alabama. That's a top 10 football team out there on the field. And LSU just comes up short here, and once again, the Tigers lose 42-28 here in Bryant-Denny Stadium. Florida, Georgia State, and Texas A&M trying to round it out. And I think now, obviously, the goal has, can you get to double-digit wins? You feel maybe you can take some type of resolve in that in building this program. But, man, very disappointing loss for this group. Any final thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, you're in a very similar position as you were last year. I mean, you're a 3-loss team right now. Obviously, going in, you're not in exactly the same position considering.
Not a real road to Atlanta.
Not a real road to Atlanta. Not a real road to the college football playoff. But you're at 3 losses. You have a chance to get to double digits. Depends on obviously a lot of things here, but what kind of bowl game does LSU get into? It will be very interesting. But I'm going to be more interested, just even away from just the wins and losses. How does this group respond?
It tells you a lot about the culture.
It tells you a lot about the culture. It tells you a lot about some of the young pieces that are going to be here for next year and years to come. I'll be very interested to see just kind of who gets an opportunity maybe to step up and maybe start to maybe build some momentum, build some confidence in for next offseason, and certainly what you hope to be a more productive and successful 2024 season. Those are the big things I'm going to be looking for.
Yeah, very important. The culture, you're going to learn a lot about that over the rest of November. LSU all but eliminated from the SEC West and the chance to go to Atlanta. 42-28 the final. Alabama wins it in the second half, a big one as third down conversions, tackling, a lot of different things, the storylines. We'll have you all caught up over at Go 24/7. This is the YouTube channel. Make sure to subscribe, like the video, and share it with your friends. For Glen West, my name is Bryce Koon signing off here from Bryant-Denny Stadium. 42-28 LSU falls.